Hi, my name's Paul Cresswell. Welcome to Paul's Tackle Reviews. The normal purpose of this YouTube channel is to give you reviews of tackle that's been out on the bank, tried and tested by an unbiased, unsponsored angler, and that's me. And there's over 60 videos now for you to look at on my channel. As you might expect, I'm starting to run out of things to do, so I've decided to do an instructional video on how to fish a certain method. I'm not a professional angler, I'm not an expert. I would describe my standard as a good club angler, but I've been fishing pace for 20 years now, since me and my great mate went up to Woodlands Lake and watched this guy just absolutely take it apart, and we asked him what was going off, and he took us through the basics, and I've refined that over the years. I think it's a method a lot of people are scared of, and everybody knows you can go fishing with a float, wait for the float to go under and strike, and that's how it works. Paste is just a little bit different from that, and I go pleasure fishing and I'm catching well on paste, and people come up and ask me what I'm doing, and then I can kind of see the thinking, well, I don't really know how to do that, and I'm a bit scared of it. So I'm going to take you through it the way that I do it. Now, if you put the 10 best anglers in Britain on a venue and said fish a method, say paste or pellet long, they would all do it differently. And what I'm not saying today, this is the definitive way to do it. I'm going to show you my way of doing it. I'm still tweaking, still learning, still doing things differently, but it will hopefully give you some pointers and maybe take the fear out of it. What I will say is I'm doing this in 6 parts because it would just be a massive video, and I want to go into some detail. So today is part 1. We're looking at floats, lines, hooks and elastics. Part 2 is mixing the bait and the consistency of the bait, and we're going to show it in the water in part 2. Part 3, where to fish up, where to fish, how to plumb up, and how to feed and pull pots and all the other little intricacies around it. Number 4 I think will be popular, and I've already done some filming for this, and that is what is a bite and what isn't a bite, and I've done some great filming already, and I think that's a big part of the learning exercise, because just because your float goes under doesn't mean it's a bite. Number 5 will be a fairly short one, but it's important. I'm going to call it keeping reasonably clean, because paste can be a messy job. You can get it all over yourself, get it all over the pole, and I think if you keep yourself reasonably clean, it keeps it more efficient and means you have to do less kind of sorting out when you get home. Finally, I'm just going to do a short video of me setting up on the bank, taking you through all the things I've done in the previous 5 videos and watching me catch on the bank. So today's part 1, and I'm going to start by looking at the floats I use. And for paste fishing, you need a float with a long tip, because you're going to have a lot of tip showing. It's going to be bobbing about, and then all of a sudden it's going to shoot under, and that's the bite. So you need plenty of tip showing. You need a float with a long tip. I use 2 floats. I use these, and I'll put the link on the bottom. These are from RG Fishing. That's called their M-Paste float, 0.2 grams. You can see it's got a long tip, a spring eye, glass stem, ultra strong. The only reason I have to buy any more is when I lose them in vegetation. I've not had one break yet. And the other one I use is the Preston paste floats, obviously easier to get hold of. This is the size 3. I've also got the size 1, and they're a little bit bigger floats. So generally up to 3 foot I'm using the RG float. 3 foot and above I tend to use the Preston floats as well. What you will see on some of the floats, and like this one, and I'll put some close-up photos during the video, is a black mark halfway down. It doesn't come with that. That's just a bit of silicone tubing put over the top. I just think it helps when you're watching the float. Ideally I tend to have about that much float, so a little bit under the black tip but not quite the body showing. They've both got a thick tip. I think that one's 2mm, this is 1.5mm. Both glass stems, really strong floats. That's what you need. They're going to take some punishment, not just while you're fishing, but when you're landing fish and big fish are thrashing around and these are on the edge or in your landing net as well. Now you can buy this float with a little eye on the top, and the Preston ones actually come with an eye on the top. Personally I don't like that, and I can see why you do it, because in really good conditions you can get everything direct and then you're straight into the fish. But everywhere I seem to fish has wind and skim and whatever, and I just find the line coming out a little bit more difficult. I do fish with a back shot to give me some control, so personally I don't use that. You can pull them out of the floats, or you can just not order it with that on. So there we have the float, and if I put that on the water and I'll put a close-up photo, you'll see that it will just lie on the water. An excellent tip, and I think this was Andy Findlay on one of his Preston videos, is I've got a very short length of tungsten tubing. Now this is something you get in the carp side of the tackle shop, and you get the right length piece and use it as your bottom float rubber, and then all of a sudden I've now got that tungsten tubing set, so the whole tip is out. And the benefit of that is if I'm fishing at dead depth and maybe the paste is holding the bait down just a little bit and the paste comes off, then obviously the float comes up, so you know you've lost your paste. The other thing is, if you're fishing in the margin, say, and you might be fishing 6 inch of line or even more on the deck, you haven't got a float lying flat, you've still got a float lying normally, so it doesn't get affected by skim, and you will still know when you've got a bite. So excellent little tip. I think it's 3 or 4 quid for 2 meters. I've used about 10 centimeters in my life so far. So coming on to line, and this is a little bit more straightforward. All of my main lines I use AccuPower, and for paste I use 020 all the time. Generally you're fishing for big fish, you're generally not fishing that deep, you want some strength. That is a brilliant main line. I use that all the time. No point going any finer as far as I'm concerned. The lowest hook length I would use with that would be 014, but sometimes I use 020 to 020, and it always breaks on the hook length anyway. When I'm looking at the hook lengths, my personal preference, and I've done the video on lines, is to use the Power Micron. I've used this for some time. It came out well in the test. It ties beautifully. I really know what it's capable of, so I will use that in 014, 016 and 020. What I will say is, people say, oh, how long does the hook length need to be? It doesn't matter. If it's 4 inch or 6 inch, you've got no shot on the line, so it isn't going to make any difference how you tie them. So let me just take you through a full rig, and this is one I used the other day. So I've got my little loops there to put it on the Dacron, I've got a back shot, a number 8 stops there that I can move up and down the line. I tend to have it probably nearer the Dacron than not. I've got my floating line. As I say, no shot on the line. We're down to a 4-inch hook length there. And I've got my nice big fat hook that I'm going to come on and talk about now. Just the other point is the length of the lash. When this first started, everybody used to fish it really tight and really short to pick up on the bites. I think over time I tend to work around 14 inches a kind of average lash, because there will be occasions where, I kid you not, your float is under the water. You can maybe just see it through the water, but it isn't a bite. So if you didn't have any give there, then you're just going to pull your hook out of your bait and you're going to have to start again. Let's talk about the hooks now, and this isn't a method for subtlety. You're going to have a big hook and it's going to be buried within the paste, so the fish aren't going to see your hook, so you can get away with a big hook. Now I use 3 hooks for this. If I'm fishing with 014 line, I tend to use a size 12 GPM. I'll put 3 hooks up there. For 016, I tend to use the Acolyte Carp Pellet, which is a new hook to me, and I'm just trying now and really good so far. And then if I'm in full beast mode, then I've got an 020 hook length, and I've got it to a size 12 Preston XSH. So what you'll see is we've got 2 size 12 and a size 10 Drennan, and as there is no industry standard for hooks, they are all about the same, but they are all big hooks that you will bury in your paste. So finally, just on to elastic, and it really depends what you're fishing for. And I fish a venue where I'm catching really good skimmers and bream, hardly ever catch a carp, and in those circumstances I'm looking at the MAP hybrid, which is my personal choice, 8 to 10, so that's 1.6 millimeters. It's just very similar to the size 9 Duraslip. That's great. I think your elastics need to be slightly on the heavy side, because you can get away with that, because you get a really good hook hold because you've got a really big hook, so you don't pull out a fish quite so much. So kind of general summer work, I'll be using the MAP 12 to 14, 2 millimeters, same as the white Duraslip, the 13. That's a great all-rounder. And then if the fish are a bit bigger, or it's been red hot of late, I've been using the 14 to 16, which I think is an excellent elastic for fishing with paste fish up to 10 pound perfect. And then very occasionally you find yourself in a bit of a snag pit, and you're fishing up against reeds, and or maybe the margin, and there's a lot of snags there and you need to get the fish out. I've got a few top kits with the MIDI 18 to 20. This is a solid elastic. I've even got a couple of one-piece kits with that in, really where it's kind of hit and hold and you can't give them too much. So whatever brand of elastic, whatever type you're doing, you're matching it to the fish, but you're trying probably just to be maybe a grade heavier than if you were just fishing, say, hard pellets or something like that. That's it, that's part 1. Any questions or comments, please put them below. Obviously, if you subscribe, you'll get automatically notified of the forthcoming parts. I'm hoping to do them every few days, so there'll be a steady stream of information coming out there. Like I say, any comments or anything you want to say, just put it below. I'll be interested when we get to the end of this whether people have found it useful that I've done something other than just reviewing fishing tackle. But don't fear, I am going to still carry on reviewing fishing tackle as I continue to buy it. That's all for now. Until next time, tight lines.